No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Hello and welcome to my review of War of the Worlds, developed by GT Interactive and Pixel Logic and released in 1999 on the PlayStation 1. The game is based on the novel by H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds, but uses the music and imagery created by Jeff Wayne for his 1970s musical version, which has proved to be very popular. The plot of the game is to negotiate 14 levels of the game, repelling the attacks launched by the hostile Martian forces. Each level requires you achieve certain tasks as well as tackling the Martian fighting machines and other assorted weaponry. The Martian forces are a departure from both the novel and the album, and are taken from the expanded universe created by Jeff Wayne. Much of these Martian units are taken from another War of the Worlds game using Jeff Wayne's material, which was released on the PC. This is different from the PS1 version, being a real-time strategy game and allowing the player to play as either the humans or the Martians. In the PS1 version of the game, your only option is to play as the humans. You get to control various vehicles, which seem to be from a later period in human history than the setting of the novel. I was unaware that the British Army had fully mobile tanks and anti-aircraft defences prior to World War I. It is an inconsistency that can be overlooked, but it does seem to fly against the source material nonetheless. Amongst some of the vehicles the Martians deploy are the iconic fighting machines from the album cover and artwork, flying machines which was briefly mentioned in the novel but form the mainstay of the Martian attack force in the game, scout machines which are a smaller trimmed down fighting machine, scanning machines which are a larger squat machine that scan the area calling in a flying machine strike when they see you, and so on. Each machine has a weakness that can be exploited to make destroying them easier, though most of the time the best tactic is just to keep blasting them until they explode. After a torturous training level which seems to go on forever until the Martians thankfully appear to break up the monotony, you are assigned to command units in each of the 14 levels. You are usually assigned a number of vehicles to control, and you do this by jumping to each vehicle using the in-game map, which can be called upon at any time. In some levels, you can also harvest scrap metal and deliver this and workers to a factory located in the level in order to create new units. In some ways this is a strategy element, but it is very basic and hardly detracts from the main theme of the game, which is action. The levels are very samey. There is an odd level which adds variety, the most notable being the level whereby you are on the illustrious Thunderchild warship as you take out various Martian units in a sort of on-rails shooter, but it is not enough to breathe life into the game. Indeed, you feel that you have seen all the game has to offer after half a dozen levels or so, the Thunderchild level aside. The game can be tough as you progress through. You are constantly harassed by the Martians, and in some levels this gets to be really frustrating and results in some unfair losses, as you have no choice but to abandon one unit to command another in order to carry out a specific task required to complete the level. This often results in the unit you have just left being attacked and destroyed, thanks to the awful allied AI, which is often happy to sit there and doing nothing whilst the Martian toasts it alive. The Martians themselves only show a basic AI, although this is not really an issue due to the sheer volume you face in each level. Most of the Martian machines are easily dispatched in conflict with the source material, which goes at great lengths to illustrate the extreme technological advantage the Martians had and how ill-equipped mankind was to deal with them. It might seem a bit picky, but I cannot help feel the game would have benefited from fewer Martians, making them more powerful, and place a greater emphasis on organising your defences at each level in a more comprehensive way. The game uses a redundant password system, which, considering the game was released in 1999 toward the end of the PS1's life cycle, is not acceptable, and memory cards were regarded as the standard for saving games, near enough from the word go. Thankfully it is a short password, but it is irritating nonetheless. The controls are somewhat hit and miss as well. Controlling the vehicles is unnecessarily fussy. Often these heavily armoured vehicles zip around the map at an alarming pace, careering into trees, buildings and other obstacles. The aiming of the vehicle weapon is also a mess. It shares the same controls as the movement, so often you find that you have to stop, shoot, then move on. Not good when you have 5 or 6 Martians bearing down on you. As you progress through the game, other vehicles are made available, but they too suffer from the poorly conceived control system. The same can be said for controlling the sights when you're in a gun emplacement. It does not feel responsive enough, giving a spongy feel to it. Thankfully the standard machine guns in these turrets make short work of the Martians. This is odd when you consider that the artillery and cannon shots require more hits to achieve the destruction of the very same Martian machines. It is difficult sometimes to go back and review old games, because it's easy to forget the systems they were released on are very limited compared to those of today. However, the graphics are not good as they could have been. They convey the atmosphere very well and the Martian machines are well drawn, but are horribly animated. Also, there is little variety in the levels, and there is something that is depressing about playing the game faced with the constant leaden skies and the dark greens and browns with no variety at all. Sound-wise, the game is a mixed bag too. The soundtrack is excellent, using remixed tracks from the album, overseen by Jeff Wayne. They add a real atmosphere to proceedings. However, the actual sound effects are a huge letdown. They should have been the game's main strong point. The hulking great fighting machines move around the landscape in silence. They do not emit their ooh-la cry in the game, only on completion of each mission, where this again is lifted straight from the album's soundtrack. There is no thumping on the ground with each stride, or even any noise from the workings of the machines themselves. Strangely enough, the flying machines have a droning noise when they pass you by, and the heat rays have a good crackling electric sound. It was almost as though they ran out of time to complete the sound, leaving me feeling somewhat removed from proceedings. Finally, there are also inconsistencies with the very story the game adapts. In the CG intro, we are clearly told that the Martians have diverted their invasion to Scotland, and this is where you are to engage them. However, your missions start and continue in the southeast England, the setting of the novel. The reason for this being that the campaign introduction was actually taken from the human campaign from the PC game in its entirety. Could they have not developed something exclusive for the PS1 version, or simply omitted it altogether? Or why not set the game as per the introduction? It reeks of a low-budget development that was rushed to meet some sort of deadline, which is a shame because with some polish and testing this could have been a much better game than it ultimately turned out to be. I wait in hope that someday someone will make a proper War of the Worlds game bringing the tension and terror of the novel to the gaming public, but I fear that that day may never dawn, despite many games either being directly influenced or tipping their hat to the source material. All in all, it is a disappointing game. There is so much promise, and it does deliver on some levels, but the poor design and mechanics as well as the silly errors in the production spoil it. It doesn't ever seem to know what it wants to be. It's too simplistic to be regarded as an action RTS and too flimsy to be regarded as a straight-up action game. You can pick it up cheap, it can be difficult to find a copy, then check it out if you are a massive fan of the book and the album and simply must play it. But I would advise anyone else to avoid it. It's a game that is filled with too many flaws to be enjoyable, and the tragedy is it could have been so much better with a little bit of time and effort. Thanks for listening and watching, and I'll see you again next time.
Fire leapt from house to house. The population panicked and ran. This was no disciplined march. It was a stampede, without order and without a goal. It was the beginning of the rout of civilization, of the massacre of mankind. The earth belonged to the Martians.